How are you?
I'm great.
Haven't seen you for a while.
I know.
Did you enjoy the hockey talk?
Oh, yeah. Ross is great. I mean, it's just even great, like, having them in the building, right? I mean, that's what's so cool about this place is when they come and hang out and they're just in the building. It's neat. It's like Christmas time or whatever when family comes over, and it's so nice to see. I mean, as much as we enjoy each other's company, it's always nice when these guys come in and the Stanley Cup ring is out and we get to hear stories in the break. Clark, of course, is picking his brain, geeking out about the NHL draft and things like that. That's fun.
Well, we're very grateful to have these guys come and hang out. They're busy guys. What do you say? He just got home from Munich last night?
Yeah.
Just like it's no big deal.
Yeah.
So hip-hops the globe on a regular basis watching hockey. He's got a good life, and good work, Clark, on bringing him in. Actually, I was remiss here. I had some questions on the Prairie Mobile text line, and I didn't read them. Dang it. But we got Metal Shingle Guy writes in every day. He's a huge XFL fan. Maybe we'll shift gears from hockey for a moment. He says, all rosters expand by 5, Rod. Team 9 guys get dispersed through the league after week 5. Peters is a great ad for Houston. Like to see him in the CFL again. And he's referring to the news that we broke earlier today that Brian Peters, the former Rider linebacker, former Viking and Houston Texans linebacker, has signed with the Houston Roughnecks of the XFL. And what does it mean? Well, I got a few thoughts on that. One, I'm pumping away on the elliptical this morning, and I see this ad come up on TSN just before SportsCenter. That says, the XFL, airing Saturdays and Sundays on TSN. And I'm thinking, no, it's not. Because everybody's pissed off that the games weren't on this past weekend.
Yeah,
so don't say you're going to air them and then don't air them.
Right.
A, that's the very first thing that comes to mind. 2, how the CFL wants to allocate its money to its players is really their own business. If you want to give $750,000 to a quarterback, that's your deal. If you want to give $65,000 to a U.S. rookie, that's also your deal. But you are going to miss out on players like Brian Peters, who's been up here, made his name, went in the NFL, had some good productive years. But with the XFL being an option, they're going to go to the XFL. They just want to play ball.
They want to play ball, and they want the shortest possible route back to wherever's going to get them paid again, too, right? And wherever is going to get them the limelight. Some of these guys have made money, and they've got other things going on that they just want to, play ball and have that prestige, right? I'm an NFL athlete. I get treated differently. I roll, you know what I mean? And XFL, excuse me, gives you some of that, especially with the television coverage, the exposure you have across North America. It's massive. And so you get a little bit of that, too. He wants to play football. Does it mean he's not going to come back to the CFL? No. But he missed out on the free agency period. Didn't get picked up. Maybe teams didn't know he was available or looking. Maybe he's waiting on the NFL. So he'll go to the XFL. And it might mean that once the season's over, he's available for the CFL. That'll be interesting because I know the CFL management is likely watching. Scouts are likely watching. General managers are likely watching the XFL. It's available, right? If you can find it on TV. So you know that these contracts are up in May. And that when training camp comes up and your coach says, look, this guy's not what we thought he was. We got a hole here, and we got a hole here, and we got a hole here. They can go to their board and be like, oh, this guy killed it in the XFL. This guy looked pretty good. This young guy looked pretty good. Let's give him a call. And I think you'll see some of those guys filter into the league.
Yep. This XFL thing's really interesting to watch. In that, look, all things being equal, of course, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, let's just use the team here, would love to have Brian Peters on their roster. It all comes down to money. So so when I point this out, it's not like they're like, we don't want Brian Peters. No, they probably do. He's got a lot of wear and tear on his body, and I get it. You ask about being scouted. He was on this show. I don't know if you were co-hosting with me that day and did that interview. Remember, he was sitting on his front porch with his hat on backwards, and of course, he had his friggin' wife beater on, huge muscles, and he's like, I would love to come back to the CFL. I absolutely would. Well, there were no offers. So now he's going to the XFL. And as far as whether this league's going to stick around or not, I'm a really big believer in marketing, as I think you are too.
Yep.
And the XFL didn't fall on its face in week 2 like it did way back in 2001. And I don't remember how much I don't know how much you remember about back in 2001. The league was rolling, But because of some of its own snafus, games running too long, they were interrupting Saturday Night Live because it was on NBC and that was ticking off the rest of America. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like it just didn't run smooth. And it wasn't because of anything on the on-field product. It's not because they ran out of money.
Right.
But they lost their TV partners at the time.
And that's a problem.
And that killed them.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. The game can be great. The fans can love it. But that's in your market. TV, I mean, it's so key to growing your audience and growing your game. And they're doing it right now. You almost build it for television first. And that's going to,
I think so.
And that's going to bring fans in. If you build it for television, fans will come because you're going to start marketing it that way. So I think that's really interesting. I really do.
Jason in Red Deer writes in and says, what are your guys' thoughts on the Houston game being cut short and the officials taking off before looking at it? Well, I don't know all the details on that. I saw my good friend Luke Mulliner going off on Twitter saying the league lost credibility because they did cut a game off. But that's my point. Back it was a week 1 or week 2 in 2001 with the XFL. And I was watching this they did a 30 for 30 documentary on it. It was great. A game went into double overtime, then triple overtime. That's what went into Saturday Night Live. And it really ticked off NBC.
Yeah.
So my guess is this was the threat of that happening. They had to cut the game off because it's a 3-hour block window. They can't have the games running long. They don't want to have the same thing happen again. That's just my guess. I haven't delved into this situation, but I could very much see that happening. But I do remember talking to CFL types a year ago when the Alliance, actually a year and a half ago when the Alliance League was starting up, and they're all, oh yeah, let's just wait and see if it lasts before we talk about if it's a threat. And you know what? They were right. They were absolutely right. And it wasn't really a threat either, because you know what? What CFL names do you remember going to the Alliance? Hardly any.
Yeah.
If any, it was guys like Marquise Williams who'd been through here, who wasn't really a name. Brian Peters was a contributor in this league.
Yep.
Derek Dennis, contributor. S.J. Green, Sergio Castillo. Are you seeing the difference?
Big time. There's contributors. Now, Trent Richardson was in the Alliance League, so there was some names, but not really.
He wasn't a contributor in the CFL yet. He did have one 100-yard game, but those other guys spent substantial time.
All-stars, league award winners, veterans that had key roles, starters. It's a big difference for sure. And so they're off to a great start. You can look at attendance numbers, but everybody that's talking about attendance numbers or looking at different things right now, it's so small-minded and narrow vision, which you need a little bit of. But like when you're looking at the success of something, geez, you can't look like this. If you would look at success, I mean, if you were evaluating that way, think of the first week of this show. I mean, sponsors were coming in, but we were not rolling in money and right on day one. It's just it's a new venture. But you look now, I mean, everything's great, rolling. Big national TV deal. We couldn't be flying higher. Life's great, right? XFL, the same deal. So people that are kind of poo-pooing on, well, the attendance went down last week. Well, they're only averaging this. But they got all these big names. They've got the TV deal. They're ahead of probably where they hoped they would be at this point.
They're saying that, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Attendance numbers, they're not really worried about that on a week-to-week basis right now. That's not their focus.
I'm spending more time reading coverage about the league than I am watching the games. Saturdays and Sunday afternoons don't always work for me. Jason goes on to say the Houston quarterback took a knee in the victory formation and was 2 seconds left when his knee touched. The refs ended the game. Should have been a turnover on downs on their 20. So what? They would have had one more play. So it was an officiating gaffe. Big deal. Like they'd be the first league in the history of sport to have a ref screw up. If I'm reading that right, who really cares? From Brett Upton in Saskatoon writes in, he says, Johnny Manziel was another CFLer who went to the Alliance, and in all seriousness, I hope he gets better. Johnny doesn't really seems to want to get better, so he doesn't seem to want to get better, as we all know, or
I don't think
some of us know.
That's the problem.
Yeah, is the first step. Tyler, our sales manager, writing in, he says, the XFL has the greatest beer snake of all time. Here's the problem. What came out of week 5 in the XFL? The beer snake.
Yeah.
Which isn't really a problem. The fact of the matter is, people are talking about it. It's the buzz. That's the whole thing. If people weren't talking about it, that would be the problem.
And do you know what they're talking about? Commissioner Oliver Luck.
Pounding a beer.
Walking down the sideline, after pounding his beer with the empty cup, looking for the beer snake so he can add his cup to the bottom of the beer snake, which is amazing.
Yeah.
You talk about, you wanting your commissioner to be visible and at the games. Oliver Luck is incredibly visible, and he comes with that name that adds so much credibility in the traditional sense of football that stuff goes further than the on-field product in terms of growing the game. That stuff is huge.
Yeah, so the beer snake's what came out of week 5. Anonymous texter writes in on the Prairie Mobile text line. He says, the games were on TSN Saturday. Sunday, the last game was on ESPN. TSN chose curling. Well, it was the Brier final. And believe me, we talked about it Monday morning. I said, it's not like TSN was airing one thing on 5 channels. Mm-hmm. They had NASCAR going on. They had curling going on. They had something else going on. My point is I wanted to watch the XFL, and it wasn't on. So just don't say that you're going to have the XFL and then not have it.
Yeah.
That's all. And I could have wandered across my living room and turned on my Android box. I just didn't feel like it.
Yeah. You could have found it, I guess.
I could have found it, but as I said on Monday, put it right in front of my face.
Yes.
Put it right in front of my face.
Shouldn't have to be work to find it. You're probably not going to watch it if it takes any work at all. That's a big thing. And just, quick thought on, you mentioned, the Brier was on, and the Dunstone rink earlier. That was our poll question yesterday. Saw Braden Muscowie in the airport last night.
What do you have to say?
Coming home. I didn't talk.
What were you doing in the airport?
Picking up mom and dad from Cuba.
Sweet.
Yeah, so it's like 10:30 at night. He was getting off the plane, headphones in, but he, probably not in the best mood. You
never know with him.
Disappointed.
Because he looks mean.
Yeah, he's an intimidating guy. But
yeah.
He kind of saw me at the corner of his eye and perked up and came right over, and we shook hands and said, great job this week. Tough way to finish, but he appreciated that and said we'll have to get him in here soon. But it was good to see him, and just a tangent there.
That's all good. Chris Clark writing in on the Prairie Mobile text line. He's from the Unofficial Pats podcast. I think he wanted us to ask this to Ross Mahoney. He's been on this for weeks. Chris Clark, good guy. I see him at all the Pats games. He says, how about the NHL considering changing the CHL transfer rule to allow 19-year-olds to play in the AHL? I just don't really care about that. And I definitely don't care until it affects a team or a player that I'm involved with. I guess I should have mentioned it to Ross. Do you have a thought on that?
You know what? It would affect some teams, but
sure. Until it does, I don't care.
It'd be no different than a guy who's been drafted like Kirby Dach going to the NHL. Yeah, they can play in the AHL, and maybe you'd see the AHL full of more 19-year-olds. Well, then there'd be more of an emphasis in the Western Hockey League on making sure you have 3 good 20s, but you'd have more of an emphasis on 18-year-olds. It would just change. And yeah, it would be an adjustment.
It's not that big a deal.
But it would be the same across the board. And so you'd lose a little bit of the high-end talent in the Western Hockey League, for sure. But it would still make it incredibly competitive. It would still, in my mind, it wouldn't affect me that much. It would be a small change.
It seems to me like once every 3, 4, 5 years, this comes into play. And Kirby Dach is a really good example, but he's only 18.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't actually, in this case,
wouldn't affect it.
I just, frankly, Chris has been asking about it for weeks. There's a reason I've kind of been ignoring it because I don't care. And I think 98%, maybe actually no, 99.8% of people don't care.
I think you look at it and you think, okay, well, Sam Steele then probably wouldn't have been playing in the Memorial Cup for the Pats. And they might not have affected them. They might not have bid for the Memorial Cup then because they might not have had Sam Steele. But you don't know that at the time. But you got to think bigger than your team. If they don't have Sam Steele, then Hamilton doesn't have Robert Thomas. And it all balances out at the end. But
it does, but it hurts the product.
It does hurt the product. That is true. But something that I'm not going to spend too much time thinking about or worrying about right now, I don't know how realistic it is.
Well, what do you say? It's going to happen, or they're talking about it? We've already spent more time on it than we should. I'll tell you this. Major junior hockey, and junior hockey in general, has a lot of problems. They get a lot of concerns to worry about.
Yeah.
But it's not my concern. That's their concern, not mine. What's up with Rich Sutter? He's just landing. So we're expecting to have Rich Sutter before we go off the air today. We're going to take a pause. Hey, it's one of our favorite times. Let's just answer questions, you and me, from the viewers and listeners.
Yeah.
You down with that?
I'm down.
Okay. And we're also going to give away 2 tickets. Contest time. 2 tickets right now to the, through the break, to the Bo Knows, Bob Poley, and Roger Aldag Legend Series induction ceremony Saturday, April the 18th. We'll be inducting Bob Poley and Roger Aldag, 2 CFL legends, 2 Rough Riders legends, into the Rams Hall of Fame. The Legend Series induction ceremony. Be the first one to text us now on the Prairie Mobile text line 306-840-8777. You'll be joining me, the MC, Steve Mazurek, the celebrity guest speaker, plus Poley and Aldag on April 18th. Text me now. We'll be right back. It's the Rod Pedersen Show on Facebook Live and listen live at rodpedersen.com.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of the Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.